My boss said, "You're fired." I replied, "Great." He ignored me. But then,
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
in the crowded meeting room, James stood in silence, looking around with a gaze full of astonishment and a hint of helplessness. For 20 years, he had devoted himself to Constructora Valle, laying the foundation for projects that brought enormous benefits to the community. He couldn't believe that someone like Nathan could be seated in a leadership position in the company simply because he was the CEO's nephew. Nathan, a tall young man with a smirk, wore a suit far too expensive for his actual experience and capabilities. He looked past James as though he were invisible. Rising, he placed a hand on James's shoulder and said with a mocking tone, "James, I know you're experienced, but the company needs fresher ideas. It's time for Constructora Valle to become more than just an ordinary company, it should be an empire, and I'm going to make that happen. Do you understand?" James clenched his lips, struggling to keep his composure. But as Nathan went on and on about innovations that were nothing more than sacrificing quality and safety, James couldn't hold back any longer. "Nathan," he said slowly, with restrained anger in his voice. "Do you understand the importance of the Hope Bridge project? It's not just a construction project, it's a lifeline for the people in remote areas. A single mistake could lead to disaster." Nathan shrugged, smiling dismissively. "James, don't be so pessimistic. You're always just thinking about safety and quality, but these days, speed is what really counts. If we don't move quickly, the company will miss many opportunities." At that moment, some colleagues around them began murmuring, casting worried glances at James. Paul, a fellow engineer who had worked with James for years, whispered, "James, don't waste your energy on him. Nathan doesn't understand anything." James looked over at Paul, his gaze filled with emotion. "Paul, I can't just sit back and watch this company go downhill because of the greed and ignorance of someone who has no real experience." But Nathan scoffed again, his tone full of contempt. "All right, James. Do whatever you want. But remember, I'm the one making decisions here. If you don't comply, don't blame me for any consequences." Nathan's arrogance felt like a knife cutting into James's pride. He looked at Nathan once more, his eyes filled with barely concealed anger. But he knew there was nothing he could do right now and had to stay silent, holding on to a bit of dignity and hoping the company would wake up before it was too late. After the meeting, James sat alone in his office, weighed down by his thoughts. He reflected on the years he had dedicated and the values he had always upheld for Constructora Valle. But now, the company he had once cherished like family no longer felt like his place. Suddenly, a voice sounded from outside the door. "James, may I come in?" It was Lucy, a talented architect and one of James's closest friends. She entered, her eyes full of concern as she looked at him. "I heard everything that happened in the meeting. Nathan is an idiot and arrogant. But what are we going to do?" James sighed, shaking his head. "Lucy, I really don't know. All he cares about is profit and speed. He doesn't understand that quality and safety are what have built this company's reputation." Lucy placed a reassuring hand on James's shoulder, her voice gentle but resolute. "James, no matter what, I'm with you. We have to try to protect the Hope Bridge project. It's not just work, it's our dedication." James looked at Lucy, deeply grateful. But he knew this battle would not be easy. Nathan wasn't just arrogant, he was also cunning. James had to find a way to protect the project and his own honor. After the tense meeting with Nathan, James still tried to maintain professionalism, but he knew it wouldn't last much longer. The next day, an emergency meeting was held, attended by all senior engineers and project managers. Nathan, with a smug look, entered the room and declared, "Today, we're changing the way we work. From now on, every final decision about the projects must be approved by me. We need to cut costs and speed up progress. That's all that matters." A heavy silence filled the room. James glanced at Paul, his longtime colleague, who sat there with a clearly frustrated expression. It wasn't just Paul, other engineers couldn't hide their dissatisfaction either, but none dared to speak up. Nathan continued, rambling on. James, I've reviewed the Hope Bridge project you're managing. It seems you've been too focused on materials and durability. I've looked over the cost report, and honestly, it's far too expensive. We'll have to cut down on some unnecessary materials. James jumped to his feet, unable to contain himself. Nathan, do you understand that the Hope Bridge is the only route for people in remote areas to connect with the outside world? Cutting down on materials could jeopardize the safety of the bridge. Nathan smirked, his tone dripping with disdain. James, you can sit down. I'm the one making decisions here, and I don't need you reminding me of my role. If you can't adapt to these changes, maybe you're no longer a fit for this company. Nathan's words were like a heavy blow to James's pride. He gritted his teeth, but in the end, he sat down, trying to keep calm. Paul, sitting beside him, whispered. James, it's not worth it. He's just an idiot. James remained silent, but inside, he was boiling with anger. He had spent his entire life building a reputation and dedicating himself to this company, only to be trampled on by someone as inexperienced as Nathan. He couldn't accept the lowering of safety standards just for the sake of profit. After the meeting ended, James returned to his office, his heart heavy with resentment. At that moment, a young woman entered, looking uneasy. It was Martha, a new engineer who had admired James since she first started working at the company. Mr. James, may I ask you something? Martha spoke, her voice full of hesitation but also concern. I heard about the cuts to the materials for the Hope Bridge. Is that true? James sighed and nodded. Yes, Martha. Nathan decided on it, and there's nothing I can do to stop him. Martha bit her lip, her eyes filled with indignation. But how can he do that? I admired this company for its commitment to the community and the high standards everyone here follows. Cutting down on materials could endanger so many lives. James nodded, feeling a painful ache at seeing someone as young as Martha also recognize the potential dangers. I understand, Martha. But Nathan doesn't care. For him, profit and his personal reputation are all that matter. At that moment, Paul also entered, holding a blueprint that had been altered with Nathan's required changes. He threw it onto the table, his face full of anger. James, I can't believe it. He wants us to replace high-quality steel with this cheap material. He's willing to risk people's lives just to save a few bucks. James looked at the blueprint, his heart filled with bitterness. He knew that this was not just a job, it was a responsibility to the community that he had always held dear. Paul, I'm not going to let this go on. We have to find a way. Paul sighed, looking at James sympathetically. But what can we do? Nathan has full authority. If you don't comply, he'll fire you. James clenched his jaw, anger mingling with helplessness. He didn't know what to do next, but one thing was certain, he couldn't stand by and watch Nathan destroy the values he had spent his life building. In the days following the tense meeting, James and his team of engineers had no choice but to follow Nathan's orders. However, the atmosphere in the company became more stifling as Nathan continued to make unreasonable demands, interfering in the engineers' work without any real knowledge of the field. In a private meeting with the engineering team, James tried to keep up their spirits. We will still do our best to ensure the project's safety, no matter how hard it gets, he said firmly. Martha, the youngest in the group, shook her head in frustration. But how can we ensure that when Nathan keeps cutting down costs and demanding design changes? Every time we adjust for safety, he orders us to cut back more. Paul nodded, his eyes filled with anger. It's not just that, Nathan is also forcing us to speed up construction, regardless of the fact that it could lead to huge risks. He either doesn't know or doesn't care about the consequences. James clenched his fists, his gaze resolute. We'll do everything we can, but I won't let Nathan ruin this project so easily. This is the collective effort of our entire team, and I won't allow his greed to jeopardize people's safety. But Nathan didn't stop there. It seemed he was deliberately provoking James with increasingly arrogant actions. One morning, Nathan abruptly summoned James to his office. "James, you can't keep being so stubborn," Nathan said, his eyes narrowed with disdain. "If you don't change, I won't hesitate to find someone else who can complete this project the way I want." James tried to remain calm, but his voice couldn't hide his fury. "Nathan, have you ever thought about the consequences of the decisions you're making? If this bridge fails, are you ready to be responsible for the lives that could be lost?" Nathan shrugged, indifferent. "James, stop being so dramatic. People won't care about the quality as long as the bridge is completed quickly and looks good. That's what really matters." James stood up, his eyes blazing. "You're wrong, Nathan. People deserve to be safe. If you can't understand that, then you don't deserve to be in this position." Nathan let out a cold, arrogant laugh. "I'll say it one more time, James. I'm the one who makes the decisions here. You have two choices: either comply or leave this company. Don't make me repeat myself." This confrontation was the last straw for James. He left Nathan's office, seething with anger. On his way back to his office, he ran into Lucy, who was waiting for him with a worried expression. "James, what happened?" "I saw Nathan looking furious," she asked, her eyes filled with concern. James took a deep breath, trying to contain his anger. "Nathan just threatened to fire me if I don't follow his absurd demands. He either doesn't understand or doesn't care about the consequences of his actions." Lucy placed a supportive hand on James's shoulder, her voice resolute. "James, you're not alone. We're all here to support you and will stand by you. I don't want to see this company destroyed by the greed and stupidity of someone like Nathan." Martha and Paul also appeared, standing beside James with determined looks. Paul said, "We'll find a way. If Nathan wants a fight, then he'll have to face the entire engineering team." James looked at the familiar faces of his colleagues, feeling a warmth in his heart. He knew he wasn't alone in this battle, and that there were people willing to support him, no matter the challenges ahead. But just as James felt a glimmer of hope, Nathan made an announcement that shocked everyone. He summoned the entire engineering department, declaring that James would now be under strict supervision. "I don't want to see any more mistakes. If James doesn't meet the deadlines, he'll face the consequences," Nathan said coldly. James clenched his teeth, trying to suppress the anger boiling inside. But with Nathan, all patience seemed futile. He didn't just want James to follow his orders, he wanted to destroy the reputation and dignity James had built over 20 years. "He's gone too far," Martha exclaimed, her eyes welling up with tears of anger. "James, we can't let him keep doing this." James nodded, filled with resentment. He knew this battle wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he couldn't give up. What he was defending was not just this project but his honor and responsibility to the community. A week after the last meeting with Nathan, James realized that the situation had become worse than ever. Nathan had not only placed James under surveillance but had also done everything possible to undermine him in front of his colleagues. He issued a notice requiring all engineers to report directly to him instead of James, severely damaging James's role and reputation. Every day, Nathan tried to interfere with every decision James made, from the materials used to the construction plans. The culmination came one Monday morning when Nathan suddenly held an unscheduled meeting, inviting every department. James was summoned, but he was not allowed to speak at this meeting. He sat quietly in the corner, filled with doubt and worry. Nathan took the podium with a fake smile and a pompous tone. "Today, I want to share a new vision for Constructora Valle. We can no longer follow the old, outdated paths. I am committed to bringing significant changes, a more modern, faster, and more efficient way of working. James couldn't believe what he was hearing. He knew well that Nathan's vision was actually just a series of risky decisions to cut costs and overlook quality in pursuit of quick profits. Nathan turned towards James with a contemptuous smile. James here is a long-standing employee, but perhaps he's become too accustomed to old ways of thinking. I believe we need bigger changes, people who are ready to embrace reform rather than clinging to the past. James felt his blood rush to his face. He stood up, unable to restrain himself. Nathan, do you even know what you're doing? What you call reform is just a way of destroying this company from the inside. Do you think saving money alone is enough for success? Nathan raised an eyebrow, his gaze cold. James, you have no right to speak here. I make the decisions, and I don't need you lecturing me. If you can't adapt, then maybe this isn't the place for you anymore. A heavy silence filled the meeting room. James's colleagues, including Paul and Lucy, sat quietly, full of anger but too afraid to speak. They looked at James with sympathetic yet regretful eyes, knowing he was being pushed to his limits. After the meeting, Lucy and Martha hurried to James's office. James, we can't let you face Nathan alone like this. He's gone too far. Martha said, her voice trembling with rage. Lucy nodded, her gaze resolute. James, we have to do something. If we don't, this company will be completely destroyed, not just by Nathan's arrogance but also by his greed. Can you speak with upper management? James shook his head, looking defeated. I've tried many times, but Nathan has built close relationships with senior management. They believe his changes will bring quick profits. I'm just an engineer, they don't care about my warnings. Paul, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke up. James, I heard Nathan has started recruiting more people. He's planning to replace anyone who dares to oppose him, including you. James sighed, his eyes filled with sadness. I know, Paul. But I can't just abandon this company. This is where I've spent 20 years, it's my work, my pride. Martha placed a sympathetic hand on James's shoulder. James, we all admire you. You're the only one who always puts the community's well-being above everything else. But sometimes, good people are the ones who get hurt the most. James tried to muster a weak smile, his heart full of helplessness. He knew he couldn't win this battle, at least not alone. But he also couldn't turn his back on his values and responsibilities. That evening, just as James got home, his phone unexpectedly rang. On the other end was Charles, an engineer who had once worked at Constructora Valle but left when Nathan took over. James, I heard about what's going on at the company. If you need support, some of us former colleagues are willing to help. We could start a new company and do things our way. Charles's offer made James pause for a moment. But then he shook his head, his voice filled with hesitation. Thank you, Charles, but I'm not ready to give up on Constructora Valle. At least, not until I'm sure I've done everything I can. Charles sighed. I understand, James. But remember, you're not alone. Call us whenever you need. James hung up, his heart heavy. He knew he could leave and start anew, but his loyalty to the company made it hard to let go. However, he also knew that the longer this fight went on, the more damage he would suffer. In the days that followed, James began to feel a clear sense of isolation within the company. Nathan had succeeded in building a wall between him and his other colleagues. The younger engineers, under the pressure and implicit threats from Nathan, no longer dared to interact or chat warmly with James. To them, James was now just a symbolic name, a person standing on the brink of being fired. But Nathan didn't stop there. To add more pressure, he began assigning James to insignificant projects with no strategic value, completely unrelated to the Hope Bridge. The tasks James received were mere paperwork, requiring none of the skills or experience of a senior engineer with 20 years of experience. This humiliation felt like a knife stabbing deep into James's pride. One morning, Martha found James in the small office he had been moved to, located at the end of a hallway, far from the main departments. "James, this can't go on. You're a senior engineer, you deserve to be working on more important projects. Nathan is clearly trying to humiliate you." James gave a bitter smile. "Martha, I understand that. But I have no other choice. Nathan has cut off every escape route for me. If I protest, he'll use it as an excuse to fire me immediately." Paul, who had just entered the room, shook his head in frustration. "James, he's fired countless people just because they dared to stand by you. I truly don't understand how the company can let someone like him run rampant." James closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to control the anger building inside. "Paul, I don't know anymore. Maybe I overestimated my loyalty to this company. I've given my life to it, but in the end, I'm just a pawn that can be discarded when I no longer fit." Martha shook her head, her eyes shimmering with tears. "James, don't say that. What you've done, no one else could replace. If Nathan can't recognize your value, that's his short-sightedness, not your fault." Just then, Nathan suddenly appeared in the doorway with a smug smile. "James, I need you in the conference room right away. There are some papers you need to review. Stop wasting time sitting here complaining." James stood up, full of anger but trying to hold it back. "I'll be there." He turned to look at Martha and Paul, giving them a meaningful nod before following Nathan. All the way to the conference room, Nathan continued to mock James, talking about the big changes the company was preparing and how James was falling behind the times. When they arrived in the conference room, James realized it was a public meeting, attended by all the engineers and management. Nathan took the stage, his voice filled with triumph. "Today, I want to announce a major change in personnel. James, who has been a valuable part of the company, will now only handle minor support tasks in the technical department. We need people with fresher capabilities to lead us into the future." James clenched his teeth, his fists tightly balled to contain his anger. He could hear the murmurs of his colleagues, some seemed shocked, while others, influenced by Nathan, appeared to agree. Lucy, sitting at the back of the room, couldn't hold back any longer. She stood up, her voice filled with anger. "Nathan, what you're doing is an insult to those who have dedicated themselves to this company. James is a committed person who has always put the company's interests first. What right do you have to humiliate him like this?" Nathan smirked, showing no sign of being fazed. "Lucy, if you want to leave along with James, I'd be more than happy to let you do that. Constructora Valle doesn't need dissenters." James felt his heart break into pieces. He knew that if Lucy or any of his colleagues dared to stand up for him, Nathan would fire them without mercy. Meanwhile, Nathan was using his power to intimidate and humiliate everyone, turning the company into his personal playground. At this point, Martha stood up, her voice trembling but determined. "Nathan, you can't just destroy the honor and reputation of the people who built this company. If you don't respect them, you'll be the one to pay the price." Nathan burst into laughter, his voice full of disdain. "How ridiculous. Who do you think you are? This is the age of those who can adapt, not of people stuck in the past. I'll turn Constructora Valle into a new empire, and no one, not even James, can stop me." James looked at Nathan, filled with anger and disappointment. He understood that this battle wasn't just about him, it was about the future of the company he had once loved. But he also knew that standing up to defend the company meant going up against someone as ruthless as Nathan. James left the conference room feeling utterly disheartened. The company he once considered family was now a faded shadow under the control of a dictator like Nathan. The respect, loyalty, and values James had painstakingly built were being destroyed by Nathan day by day. That afternoon, James returned to his office, where, just a few months ago, he had been respected and admired by his colleagues. But now, familiar faces avoided his gaze, some looked at him with pity, while others turned away, unwilling to face James out of fear of Nathan. Paul entered, his face filled with fury. "James, I can't take this anymore. Why do we have to tolerate someone as foolish and greedy as him? He's destroyed everything good here." James sighed, his voice weary. "Paul, I've thought about leaving, too, but I can't. If I leave, there will be no one left to protect the values this company once stood for. Nathan will continue to destroy everything for his personal gain." Martha also entered, her voice shaky but filled with determination. "James, you don't have to fight this alone. We're here to stand with you, not just for you, but for what we believe in." James smiled gratefully. But just as he was about to thank them, Nathan suddenly appeared in the doorway, his face wearing a mocking grin. "Oh, I'm surprised to see you all gathered here. James, do you realize that working hours aren't the time for meaningless chats?" James clenched his teeth, trying to suppress his anger. "Nathan, you don't have the right to cut safety standards on the project just to speed things up. I won't let you gamble with people's lives." Nathan sneered, his gaze challenging. "James, who do you think you are to lecture me? You're just an old, outdated engineer. I've said it before, if you don't like how I do things, you're free to leave the company anytime." At this moment, Lucy, who had remained silent until now, could no longer contain herself. She stood up, her voice filled with fury. "Nathan, if James isn't worthy of being here, then this company isn't worthy of our dedication either. You can't keep destroying everything James has built over the past 20 years. Nathan shrugged, unfazed by Lucy's protest. "Lucy, if you don't like it here, the door is always open. I don't hold on to anyone, especially those who can't adapt to change." The clash between Nathan and the engineers began to create a deep rift within the company. More and more of James's colleagues felt disillusioned, losing faith in the company, and some had quietly submitted their resignation letters. However, Nathan didn't care. In fact, he seemed pleased, as fewer dissenters made it easier for him to control the company. One evening, after returning home, James sat alone in the quiet room, feeling the weight of it all. He knew he was gradually losing everything he had once cherished. His closest friends, loyal colleagues, all were leaving the company. The Hope Bridge project he had once poured his heart into had now become a tool for Nathan to make profits, regardless of the safety of thousands of people. Lost in thought, James's phone suddenly rang. On the other end was a familiar voice, Charles. "James, I've heard that everyone is leaving the company because of Nathan. If things keep going this way, Constructora Valle will collapse soon." James took a deep breath, his voice heavy with sorrow. "I know, Charles. But there's nothing I can do. Nathan has complete control. I'm just an engineer, I can't stand up to him." Charles was silent for a moment, then spoke. "James, sometimes, to protect what we love, we have to be willing to sacrifice. Maybe it's time for you to leave Constructora Valle and start fresh somewhere your values are truly appreciated." Charles's words rang like a wake-up call in James's heart. He knew he couldn't stay here forever, enduring the degradation and destruction of his dignity. Perhaps it was time to end this futile battle and seek a new future. The next morning, James walked into the office, filled with determination. He packed up his desk, taking each small item that he had held onto for 20 years. Every memory, every moment of dedication now seemed to dissolve in the cold space of the company. As James left his office, his former colleagues, Paul, Martha, and Lucy, stood waiting for him in the hallway, their eyes full of emotion. Paul stepped forward and hugged James tightly. "You'll always be the one we respect the most, James. If you ever need anything, we're here." Lucy took James's hand, her voice choked with emotion. "James, hold on to your ideals. We'll never forget you and everything you've done for this company." James smiled, though his heart was filled with pain. He knew he had done all he could. He left Constructora Valle, carrying with him his memories and pride, but also a deep resentment and anger toward a system that had allowed someone like Nathan to take control. As he stepped outside the company's gates, James looked up at the clear blue sky, feeling as if a great burden had been lifted. Perhaps this was the sign of a new beginning, a new chapter in his life where he could rebuild real values and no longer endure injustice. Shortly after James left Constructora Valle, he began receiving messages and calls from former colleagues. Under Nathan's leadership, Constructora Valle was slipping into crisis. Nathan's cost-cutting decisions and lowered safety standards not only cost the company its reputation but also caused major clients to pull out one by one. One morning, while James was at his favorite cafe, he received a call from Lucy. Her voice was filled with worry and frustration. "James, you won't believe what's happening at the company. They just announced a temporary suspension of the Hope Bridge project because of numerous design flaws." James frowned. "But that's the company's most important project. If they stop it, Constructora Valle will lose a major revenue source." "Exactly," Lucy replied, her voice brimming with anger. "Everything's falling apart. Nathan refuses to listen to any advice, and he keeps blaming others. Now, even the engineers are losing patience and want to quit." James was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Lucy, I warned them about this, but they wouldn't listen. I'm just saddened that it had to end this way." Lucy hesitated, then spoke with resolve. "James, do you remember Charles's proposal? I reached out to him and some others. We're not going to let Nathan and Constructora Valle trample over the values you built. We're going to start a new company, James. A real one, that genuinely benefits the community." James was taken aback, but a glimmer of hope lit up in his eyes. "Lucy, are you serious? Everyone is willing to join me?" "Absolutely, James. Those loyal to you, those who are exhausted by Nathan's arrogance and ignorance, all of them are ready to stand by you," Lucy affirmed, her voice filled with determination. "Charles has helped us put together a plan, and we want you to lead." A strong surge of emotion rose in James's chest. He felt as though he had been given a new strength. "All right, Lucy. Let's do this. Let's build a new company together, one that all of us can be proud of." A few weeks later, James, Lucy, Charles, and a group of talented engineers, including Paul and Martha, officially founded a new company called Ingenieros del Futuro, Engineers of the Future. On the opening day, James stood before everyone, feeling a pride and excitement he hadn't felt in a long time. Finally, he could continue the values he believed in without being held back by anyone. On the first day of work, Lucy walked into James's office with a beaming smile. "James, can you believe it? We just received partnership offers from 3 of the largest construction companies in the region. They know about the Hope Bridge project and want us to carry it forward, with a safer, more sustainable version." James couldn't hide his surprise and joy. "This is an amazing opportunity, Lucy. If we can complete this project, it will be a victory not only for the company but for everyone who supported us." Lucy nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Charles and I have prepared all the necessary documents, and will be holding a meeting with the partners next week. They're very impressed with your ideals and values, James. They believe we can bring something truly special to the community." But that wasn't all. Engineers from Constructora Valle, who couldn't bear Nathan's authoritarian rule, also began flocking to Ingenieros del Futuro. Paul, James's longtime friend, came to see him with a triumphant smile. "James, you won't believe it. Since you left, Constructora Valle has become a complete mess. Nathan can't control anything, and one by one, the major clients are leaving the company." James smiled, though he still felt a hint of regret. "Paul, I never wanted anything bad to happen to Constructora Valle. I only wanted the best for that company." Paul patted James's shoulder, his voice filled with pride. "But now, we have the chance to build a better company. And this time, we won't let anyone like Nathan destroy what we believe in. In the days that followed, Ingenieros del Futuro received numerous praises and support from new partners and clients. They recognized that James and his team weren't just talented engineers, they were truly dedicated to the community. James felt happier and more fulfilled than ever, seeing his efforts being valued and recognized. During an important meeting with partners about the Hope Bridge project, James couldn't help but feel moved watching his team work passionately, collaborating seamlessly, and focusing on even the smallest details. This was completely different from Constructora Valle under Nathan's leadership, where profit was always prioritized above all else. Sitting beside James, Lucy whispered. "Do you see, James? This is the company we dreamed of. No impositions, no decisions made for personal gain. This is a company of honesty and responsibility." James looked at Lucy, his heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Lucy. Thank all of you. Without you, I would never have had the courage to do this." The room fell silent as James spoke to the partners, explaining the construction plans for the Hope Bridge with the highest standards of safety and quality. When he finished, the partners stood up, applauding, expressing their support and admiration for his dedication. The initial success of Ingenieros del Futuro quickly spread, attracting attention from the community and media. Articles continued to praise James and his team, not only for their skill but also for the sustainable values and social responsibility the company aimed to uphold. It was a powerful message sent to Nathan and Constructora Valle. One morning, as James was working in his office, Lucy came in with an excited smile. "James, you won't believe this. I just received an invitation from a renowned construction magazine. They want to do an interview with you and our company. They want to know why Ingenieros del Futuro has gained so much trust from clients." James smiled, though his eyes couldn't hide his enthusiasm. "I never imagined I'd have the chance to be featured in a magazine. But this is a great opportunity for us to share our ideals with everyone." During the interview, James candidly shared his reasons for leaving Constructora Valle, the challenges he and his team had overcome to build Ingenieros del Futuro, and their commitment to quality and safety in their projects. The interview quickly spread, receiving support from readers and industry partners alike. A few days later, Nathan, with a furious expression, appeared in Constructora Valle's office. The employees tried to avoid his gaze, as everyone knew the company was in dire straits. The number of clients had plummeted, and the major projects Nathan once pinned his hopes on were now delayed and riddled with serious issues. In his rage, Nathan summoned an emergency meeting with management. His voice was filled with anger. "Why is everything falling apart? We used to be the leading company in this industry, and now look at us. Just because one old engineer left, everything is in chaos." One of the managers, Mr. Emilio, cautiously spoke up. "Nathan, you may not want to hear this, but James wasn't just an engineer. He was the heart of the company, someone whom colleagues respected and admired. When he left, we lost many important clients because they trusted James." Nathan clenched his teeth, his voice bitter. "So now everyone's blaming me? What's so important about an engineer? I brought profit to this company, I reformed it for efficiency. James is just someone stuck in the past." Another manager, Ms. Isabel, could no longer hold back and gently said. "Nathan, sometimes efficiency isn't everything. We lost the trust of our employees and clients because of overly pragmatic decisions. Ingenieros del Futuro is succeeding because they're preserving the values James brought from the beginning." Nathan took a deep breath, struggling to control his anger. But inside, he felt threatened by James's and Ingenieros del Futuro's success. He knew Constructora Valle was on the verge of collapse if he couldn't find a solution. Meanwhile, James and his team continued to develop their projects. They were securing more and more contracts from former clients of Constructora Valle, who trusted James's integrity and loyalty. This gave James a profound sense of satisfaction, knowing his efforts and determination were paying off. One evening, after a long workday, James and his team gathered in the office to share their joy and celebrate their initial successes. Paul raised a glass of water with a smile. "James, you don't know this, but I've been waiting for this day for a long time. The day we're no longer bound by people like Nathan and can work our way." Martha laughed. "Me too. Thanks to Ingenieros del Futuro, I've rediscovered the joy in my work. No more irrational pressures, no more absurd orders from Nathan." Lucy nodded, her eyes gleaming. "James, you've given us hope, helped us realize the true value of our work. We're so grateful for that." James looked around at everyone, his heart overflowing with happiness. "I have to thank all of you. Without your support and patience, we wouldn't have this day." But their joy didn't end there. The next day, Lucy walked into James's office with an irrepressible smile. "James, you won't believe this. An international construction conglomerate has contacted us. They want to collaborate and are interested in investing in Ingenieros del Futuro. They said they admire your ideals and commitment." James was stunned and overjoyed. "This is a huge opportunity, Lucy. If we can partner with them, Ingenieros del Futuro will have the potential to expand and take on even more meaningful projects." Lucy nodded. "Exactly, James. This will be a big step forward for all of us. And it also proves that the path we chose is the right one." From afar, news of Ingenieros del Futuro's remarkable progress continued to drive Nathan mad. He couldn't believe that James, someone he had once looked down on, could build such a reputable company. Constructora Valle was now only a shadow of its former self, while James and his team were becoming increasingly successful and admired by everyone. The success of Ingenieros del Futuro continued to spread widely, becoming a model of sustainable development in the construction industry. James felt as though a new chapter in his life had begun, one built on his efforts, determination, and the support of his close colleagues. One day, James received a call from a major client, a longtime partner of Constructora Valle. It was Enrique, a veteran investor with a respected voice in the construction field. "James, do you have time to meet with me? I'd like to discuss a new project that I believe would be a great fit for Ingenieros del Futuro." James agreed to meet Enrique at his office. When Enrique arrived, he looked around and nodded, clearly impressed by the professionalism and scale of the new company. "James, I've followed your journey from afar, and I have to say, I'm very impressed. What you and your colleagues have done for Ingenieros del Futuro is something many companies could never achieve." James smiled, responding humbly. "Thank you, Enrique. It's all thanks to the support of everyone on the team and the trust of our partners." Enrique nodded. "I understand, and that's why I want to propose a major project to Ingenieros del Futuro. This project was once assigned to Constructora Valle, but I no longer have confidence in them after their repeated mistakes and decline in reputation." James looked at Enrique, surprised. "I knew Nathan had changed many things at Constructora Valle, but I didn't realize the situation had become so serious." Enrique sighed, his eyes reflecting regret. Nathan only focused on quick profits without understanding that in this industry, trust and reputation are priceless. That's what Constructora Valle lost when you left. So, I want to give this opportunity to someone who truly understands and values sustainability." A surge of joy filled James's heart. This wasn't just a project, it was a validation of Ingenieros del Futuro's success and his own. "Thank you, Enrique. I promise we will do everything we can to deliver the highest quality for this project." After Enrique left, James immediately called a meeting with his team to share the good news. When his colleagues heard about the major new project, they couldn't contain their excitement. Paul laughed. "Look at this, James. It seems Constructora Valle won't have much left to hold on to. Nathan will probably lose his mind when he finds out this project is in our hands." Lucy couldn't hold back her happiness either. "This is a major milestone for us. Since leaving Constructora Valle, I never imagined we would achieve this level of success." James smiled, his eyes shining. "It's all thanks to everyone's dedication and the support of our partners. But let's not get complacent. Let's prepare thoroughly and show that Ingenieros del Futuro was the right choice." A few weeks later, as Ingenieros del Futuro officially began work on the new project, news of the project's transfer from Constructora Valle to James spread quickly. The media began reporting on Nathan's failure and the severe decline of Constructora Valle. Nathan, who had once been arrogant and dismissive of James, now faced the threat of bankruptcy as major clients gradually abandoned the company. One evening, while James was on his way home, he received a call from an unknown number. When he answered, the voice on the other end was Nathan's, pleading. "James, I need to see you." James was a bit surprised but remained calm. "I don't think we have anything left to say, Nathan." Nathan, his voice tinged with desperation, begged. "James, I know I was wrong. I didn't recognize your value and the value of your team until it was too late. Please, give me a chance to explain." After a moment's thought, James agreed to meet Nathan at a cafe near the company. When he arrived, he found Nathan looking worn out, with a haggard, forlorn expression. Clearly, he had been under a lot of pressure. Nathan looked at James, his voice heavy. "James, I know this apology can't make up for what I did, but I truly regret it. I was too arrogant and selfish, and now I've lost everything." James listened in silence, his expression calm. "Nathan, everything happens for a reason. Constructora Valle was the result of many people's hard work, not just mine. But you disregarded the values that company was built on, and this outcome was inevitable." Nathan lowered his head, his voice filled with anguish. "James, I have nothing left. I need a chance to start over, a job at Ingenieros del Futuro, even in the smallest position. I just want to prove that I can change." James looked at Nathan for a long moment, then gently shook his head. "Nathan, everyone deserves a second chance, but you need to find your own path. Ingenieros del Futuro isn't a place for those who don't truly respect the values we uphold." Nathan nodded, looking defeated and helpless. "I understand. Thank you, James. I'll remember what you said." As Nathan left, James sat back, feeling a sense of relief. He knew that he had finally closed the chapter on Constructora Valle and Nathan. Now, he could take pride in what he had built and look forward to the future of Ingenieros del Futuro with peace and hope. James's story teaches us that staying true to one's values and ideals not only brings personal success but also earns trust and respect from those around us. Despite facing injustice and loss, James chose the path of rebuilding with responsibility and loyalty to his principles. Through Nathan's failure, the story serves as a reminder that true success doesn't come from greed or short-term profit but from the reputation and trust we cultivate over time.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.